Welcome to the Bengals Breakdown. I am your host, Jack Sperry, filling in for Tom Downey. On today's show, I'm going to be breaking down two new free agency targets for your Cincinnati Bengals. Two guys that, maybe could be good fits for the Cincinnati Bengals as we approach the 2023 NFL season. Before we get things going today, if you want to help us grow here at the Bengals Breakdown, go ahead and click that share button here right below this video on YouTube. Select the Twitter icon and click post to Twitter to share this video on Twitter. Really do appreciate all the real ones that share this video. All right, so now let's get into that first free agency target here, where it's former Broncos offensive guard Dalton Risner. Now, Dalton Risner is somebody that's played in this league for a while. He's played a lot of football, and I think that he could be a pretty nice piece for the Bengals to pick up along the offensive line if they so choose. This is what Bleacher Report had to say about potentially grabbing the veteran offensive guard. Risner would be a terrific addition for the Bengals, who took one step towards improving their offensive line by signing Orlando Brown. His addition will help, but Cincinnati should still be concerned about the fact that quarterback Joe Burrow has taken 124 sacks in only 42 regular season games. Continues to say here in Cincinnati, Risner would be an upgrade over left guard Cordell Volson, who was responsible for 5 penalties and 5 sacks allowed, according to Pro Football Focus. So before I break down Risner's game here, pick a left guard for me. If all things equal, which guy would you rather have, Dalton Risner or Cordell Volson? If you'd rather have Risner, type DR. If you'd rather have Volson, type CV. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So whenever you get an ad break here on the show, take advantage of that time by going down to the comment section, finding that pinned comment, and answering today's question. So you take a look at what the Bengals have to work with right now along the offensive line. Left guard is probably the most vulnerable spot, if I do say so myself right now, with Cordell Volson there at left guard. You really do want to solidify that left side for Joe Burrow next year. And Volson's somebody, 5 penalties last year and 5 sacks allowed. Not a great number for Volson. I think I'd be okay with Cordell as the starter next year if that ended up happening, if they don't want to go get somebody else in free agency. But Dalton Risner is somebody that I think is a pretty darn good fit with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, he's not much of a run blocker, okay? You can see that by his run grade last year from Pro Football Focus. Only a 53.4 PFF run grade, which isn't fantastic, but then his pass blocking grade was a lot higher. Did allow 20 hurries, 6 hits, and 3 sacks last year, but he's known as more of a pass protector than a run blocker here in Cincinnati. We all know that Joe Burrow in the passing game is king, so you really want pass protectors here. Dalton Risner certainly fits that bill. Now, his projected contract value before all this free agency stuff happened, before he didn't get signed in the initial periods here, he was expected to make $9.5 million by Spotrac and $8.25 million by Pro Football Focus. Now that it's much later in the process, I think the Bengals could potentially get him for a much better deal. And if I'm the Bengals, I'm not spending a bunch of money on him because he didn't have a fantastic season last year. I want him to come in on kind of like not necessarily a vet minimum deal, but something close to that, something pretty cheap where he can come in and prove that he is a starter in the National Football League, something that is of value for the Cincinnati Bengals. That's exactly what I want. So coming up here, I have one more free agency target for you to discuss when it comes to your Cincinnati Bengals. But first, make sure that you click that subscribe button and join our family here at the Bengals Breakdown. We are growing like crazy. The season is coming up here soon. We are gearing up for a potential Cincinnati Bengals Super Bowl run this season during the 2023-2024 NFL season. So go ahead right now, click that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you always get notified when we put out our free videos here on YouTube. So now the other guy to discuss in free agency right now is Frank Clark, an edge rusher, somebody that's played in the National Football League, has played on the big stages. He is a world champion. He is somebody that knows what it takes to get that ring on his finger. This is what Bleacher Report had to say about potentially grabbing the former Kansas City Chief. Clark could also make sense for the Cincinnati Bengals, who registered a mere 30 sacks last season. The Bengals did use a first-round pick on pass rusher Myles Murphy, but they can afford more sack production. Cincinnati is a legitimate title contender, and they can use any edge it can get in its quest for a first Lombardi Trophy. Clark has proved that he can provide a postseason advantage. Plus, the Bengals haven't been shy about plucking players from the conference rival Chiefs, as they signed offensive tackle Orlando Brown Jr. early in free agency. Now, I do kind of like what the Bengals have right now. I like Sam Hubbard. I like Trey Hendrickson. Maybe neither of those guys is like a top-tier elite kind of guy, but they're both really, really good players, in my opinion. You're bringing in Myles Murphy, who you're hoping can be kind of like a big-body defensive end, almost like a Rashawn Gary type, somebody that's very athletic, very highly touted coming out of the University of Clemson. You're really hoping that you can develop him into your true number one pass rusher over the next decade. But Frank Clark is somebody that's won a Super Bowl, plays his best football, I might add, in the playoffs, when the lights are brightest and when the Bengals are going to need that sack production, getting guys like Josh Allen on the ground, Aaron Rodgers on the ground, Justin Herbert, and of course, Patrick Mahomes. You got to get those guys on the ground if you want to get out of the AFC this season. And I think that Frank Clark is somebody that they could consider bringing in, especially for a cheaper deal. So would you sign Frank Clark in NFL free agency? Let me know in the comment section by typing Y for yes or N for no. Now we take a look at what Clark has done over the last couple of years. 5 sacks in 2022, 4.5 sacks in 2021. He's not a remarkable pass rusher in terms of regular season production. That's not really what Frank Clark is about. He's somebody that turns on the Jets later on in the season. Now, you could be saying, Jack, why would they sign somebody that's not going to produce for them in the playoffs? Plus, we already have Trey Hendrickson. Plus, we already have Sam Hubbard. Plus, we already drafted Myles Murphy. Why do we need this guy? And I would understand that, but I really like Frank Clark's game. I think that he's somebody that could help the Bengals win a Super Bowl. And if you get him for maybe $1 million, $2 million, the Bengals have quite a bit of cap space to spend here. I wouldn't mind bringing a guy like Frank Clark in as a rotational pass rusher, not a starter. So the projected contract value for Clark before this process was 12.4, according to Spotrac. That is clearly not going to happen at this point in the process. And then Pro Football Focus had it projected at 6.5. I don't think he gets either one of those numbers. I think it's going to be way more towards like maybe $1 million, $2 million, if that. And he might even have to sign out the vet minimum at this point because it's so late in the offseason. And like the Dalton Risner thing, at this point in free agency, I'm not spending too much money. You got to give him a prove-it deal. He's getting older. He's been there before, but he's not really that in that prime years of his career anymore. He's going to be coming in as a rotational guy, not a starter. So I'm not going to be paying him starter money. So I would only sign him to a 1-year prove-it type of deal to try to help the Bengals win a Super Bowl next season. So the extensions that are coming, this is something that you got to keep in mind here when you're giving money out to some of these other players is what contracts are coming up. Of course, Joe Burrow's contract is coming up here, and you're going to have to pay him a ton of guaranteed dollars once you sign that extension. Of course, the Bengals are going to get the deal done. Burrow wants to be in Cincinnati. He wants to win Super Bowls here for the Bengals. And then, of course, T. Higgins. Is he going to get an extension? That's a big question on a lot of Bengals fans' minds. He's a really good receiver, but you got to save some money for Jamar Chase, too. You only have so much pie to give here. And are you willing to give up that big of a chunk to T. Higgins, who's going to be wanting to make wide receiver one kind of money? And then you got Logan Wilson, somebody that, in my opinion, is one of the more well-rounded linebackers in the National Football League. But with some of these guys, with Jamar Chase coming up here in a couple of years, Joe Burrow and T. Higgins coming up, are you really willing to give the bag to an inside linebacker? I would probably say not. I think Wilson is probably going to be somebody that's going to be a free agent come the 2024 offseason. At least that's my opinion. Wouldn't mind if they extended him, but that's probably just my prediction. All right, that's going to be it for today's show, guys. I really do appreciate everybody that showed up to the end of the show. You guys are the real ones. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you enjoy the content here on the channel, and turn on your notifications so you always know when we put out our free videos here on YouTube.